All right, Chris Cuomo here in Naples on the western coast of Florida. We are tracking Hurricane Irma. Right now we want to go to Omar Jimenez. He is in Miami. And even though the eye of the storm has moved, the proof of the size of this storm, we kept saying Irma is the size of a state. The reality is that here in Naples we're getting hit. So is Omar in Miami. Omar, what's the situation?
Well, we've been seeing gusts of wind throughout this afternoon. This was the day that we knew Miami was going to get the worst of it. Where I'm standing right now is sort of a good picture of what we've seen. All of these branches and dirt have come down throughout the day. Of course, we've seen the images of the two cranes here in Miami that have spun, including two partial collapses as well. This road where I am is Biscayne Boulevard, right in the middle of downtown Miami. This road is now clear, but I can tell you earlier today, this was filled with water, definitely not passable by cars. The main cars we've seen pass through at this point, you just saw one go by. Emergency response vehicles indicating that there are situations that they do plan to respond to today. While the rain has let up, you mentioned a good point that the next threat that people and officials have warned people about is that threat of storm surge that comes right after. I can tell you here, the hotel where we are staying, this is the first day we've lost power, and that is a number we've seen start to grow by the thousand and is now in the millions statewide, and that is an issue that is going to continue to plague officials. But here in Miami, what would ordinarily be a very busy downtown on a Sunday afternoon is desolate, a ghost town, and we've even seen roofs come off some of the restaurants here as well. So Irma, while it did not the eye as well did not come directly into where we are standing right now, the threat and the effects of Irma were felt very, very strongly here.
All right, Omar, stay safe. Stay in touch. Let me know when I need to come back to you. Let's get to Bill Weir. He was in Key Largo. He is now driving north to surveil the situation. And Bill, we're here in Naples, and we are getting beaten up by the backside of Irma.
Man, I feel you, brother. I've been there. We did it this morning, and now we're trying to see what's left as Irma blows town. We are in Key Largo, actually heading south. And here's a look at this pile of flotsam here in the middle of US 1, the overseas highway. Looks like there's some major appliances in there. That looks like a freezer. There's a jet ski. All kinds of debris. And this is like, you would think that this is windblown, but from the looks of it, it was washed up here by the storm surge. We are actually pointed south right now. The Atlantic Ocean is to your left on the screen, and boy, the folks who live on that side, you know, that, I don't know, maybe prime property, but they really paid the price for that real estate. But as you can see, these are all newer homes. Those are post-Andrew homes up on the stilts, solid construction. And one thing that strikes me as I drive around today, we are seeing some devastated mobile home parks and boats and trailers tossed every which way. It looks like there's a container here that actually might have been stacked there before the storm. It looks like they used that to hold it down, to weight it against the wind. But what really strikes me, Chris, is when you look at the pictures here in the Upper Keys compared to the devastation down in Cuba and in some of the other Caribbean islands where they don't have building codes. It's a stark difference. Let's take a left here and see what's happening closer to the Atlantic. I'm cutting across. Here's a shot. That's the northbound lane of US 1. You can see why people are driving the wrong way on this highway. Yeah, Rod, you can roll it down. We're just getting a new fresh rain band kicking up here. It's been interesting. Hopefully you will, once it gets past you, Chris, there, you'll be able to get a lull in the storm the way we're now. But yeah, here's looks like a dock that is washed up onto this street. Coconuts and palm fronds and down trees literally everywhere. And it really comes down to the sturdiness of your construction, depending on what's left. Wow, this one really took a hit over here on the left. Oh, this is Snappers, is it?
This is Snappers.
Oh, okay, this is, yeah, wow, I forgot this is where we were. This is, look at that. I didn't even know where we were turning, but this is where we were doing our Thursday night live shots. If you remember the people partying and making fun of those who evacuated early, this is it. And my goodness, and this is the Jag.
All right, we lost Bill Weir. We'll check back with him, but he is showing a stark difference between the romanticism that he chronicled of the conch lifestyle and that rugged individualism of wanting to wait out the storm regardless of the evacuation calls, and the reality of what Irma did down there. And it's still very early. We know what happened in the Caribbean, but not really. We don't know the full toll of what happened there. In Cuba, we still know very little, and we don't know a lot about what's happened here yet. So far, the news has not been that dire in terms of loss of life. That's good, but again, it's early. And the number one killer in a hurricane is not wind, it's water. And storm surge is just starting to come into effect. That's what we're dealing with here in Naples. The eye has gone by. This is the backside. We're not getting crushed with rain the way we did the first time. And maybe the wind's not as strong, but it's still plenty strong. And instead of rain this time, it's bringing with it water. All that water it's sucked out is now going to come back, and there's a multiplier effect. That's the danger of the surge. So let's take a break right now. When we come back, we'll take you to the places that are dealing with the front side of Hurricane Irma and those who are still dealing with the storm surge threat, and that is the deadly concern. We'll be back. All right, Hurricane Irma is still very much in full effect from the southernmost point of Florida in Miami. We know what happened in the Keys, but now here to Naples, where we are, and then in points north, she's hitting it everywhere. This is part of the story here with this particular storm. The size, even though the eye is gone, we keep saying, and we've been hearing from all our meteorologists, that it doesn't matter if it's a direct hit, it's still going to be a bad hit. They're still getting it in Miami in much the same way that we're getting it here in Naples. Some of the numbers are different, some other relevant numbers, because wind speed, I just don't think those kinds of statistics matter unless they are immediately predictive of what somebody's about to experience. You know, in terms of what ranks where, everybody will deal with that in the days to come, but in this immediacy, this moment now, almost 2.5 million people are without power. 70,000 are holed up in shelters. Who knows how many are sheltering in place? The Miami-Dade School District is saying they are closed until further notice. The President of the United States has already signed a disaster declaration for Florida, and that's not just recognition that there's a bad storm. He knew that. The President knew it. The White House was well aware. It's showing how urgent the situation is. What that does, signing a disaster declaration, is it frees up funds immediately so that Governor Scott and the localities here that are adversely affected, that are hurt by what happens with this hurricane, can get help sooner. So that's a good sign. It's like beginning the recovery phase even though you're still in the crisis phase. What we're worried about here is storm surge, okay? So it's like the dovetailing of the hurricane concern. Wind gets the headlines, wind and rain, dangerous, scary, debris, it's real. The backside of the storm, storm surge, that's what kills you. The number one cause of death in a hurricane is water, not wind. All right, so we're gonna go now to our weather center. Chad Myers is out, and remind me, who's in there now?
Tom Sater, Chris.
Tom Sater is with us now. Tom, sorry about that, buddy. My head is completely waterlogged.
Oh, I believe
it is good to have you. We heard from the Weather Center that the water level here in Naples had risen about 7 feet in 90 minutes. What do you know about that, and what can you do with that information to project forward in terms of what we're looking at here?
Well, I tell you what, first and foremost, I'll answer that. But Chris, I just want to thank you and your crew for what you've done today. It's very rare to get the pictures you have given us to match with the radar images. And there's not many times in history that all of us get to experience what's it like to batter that eye wall and then into the eye. When it comes to the storm surge there, yes, it's been 7 feet. In fact, 4 feet in just 20 minutes. But you've got to start at where the level of normalcy is. So the water level is up 4.1 feet above normalcy. The forecast is actually 5 to 8. So it's reasonable to assume that you're getting that wraparound wind. You can actually see another 3.5 to 4 feet if we go with the forecast. Now, word moments ago, down in Marco Island, the water is now overlapping the seawall. That's not what you want to hear. Water rides farther and faster over water instead of just land. Now, we're hoping now that this has made landfall, that Irma's going to start to choke and sputter, kind of like cutting the fuel line off for your lawnmower. It still has energy until that pressure starts to rise. We're not going to lose the significant strength as far as some wind gusts, but we'll still have damaging winds. When you look at the radar, and you mentioned, Chris, 2.3 million without power, I want to mention that's just customers. That's not the number of people without power. That's one home or one business. 2.3 million without power is almost 50% of their customers. So, or Florida. So, I mean, that's massive to look at. All right, still have the tornado watch, and we still have warnings. Let's not forget about the East Coast that is seeing extreme surge, band after band of rainfall. We cannot forget about that. And in fact, around just looks like near the Orlando area, north and south, tornado warnings. We've seen over 33 tornado warnings. That number will go up. Now that we have the eye in the center here, we'll go in a little bit closer. We are about 3 hours from Port Charlotte. Now, again, when we make our way in the eye toward Fort Myers, you are in the northern band. And again, we're going to see probably the center of the eye get there within the hour. So they're going to go through the same thing you went through. 3 hours to Port Charlotte, and then about 6 to even 8 hours in the Tampa area. What's frightening at this point is that the same conditions that everybody watched, that Chris Cuomo went through, they're going to go through this, but in complete darkness. So we won't have the visuals of the flying debris, of the wall of water extending out or coming back in. So when you're flying blind, the fright really starts to grip you, and it will. But again, we're starting to see a little bit of a breakdown on that southern eye wall, which is great news, Chris, although the engine is still running, and so the surge will continue to push into every bay, every canal. And again, as we've talked about the last couple days, we're not talking about a few hundred feet. I thought I heard you say you're like 5 to 8 blocks in. We're looking at a surge that could be as far in as several miles. And some of the inundation maps from the National Hurricane Center were pushing in as far as 8, 10, even 12 miles in some cases on this coast. But again, that happens when the center of the storm is to the north. Again, the wind gusts we're getting, and this is quite interesting, even up toward Orlando, gusts of 43. By the time the system moves northward, it'll start to kind of stagger the imagination that even in Orlando, if the system kind of continues to hang a little eastward, gusts at 85 are not out of the realm of possibility. Even up toward Tallahassee, they could see 70, 75 mile per hour wind gusts. But notice down in Naples, when you were at that 141 reported wind gusts, we have no longer any instrumentation to go with. That most likely will be the scenario as the storm continues, but we're hoping to lose a little bit of a punch with this as it moves in. But again, Chris, as you've been talking about the storm surge, 9 out of 10 people in hurricanes lose their lives from water. So it doesn't matter if it's surge or what's falling, 9 out of 10, and you've been getting the message out. We all appreciate that.
God forbid, we'll keep an eye on it. I have eyes on this street for you, Tom. That's the best I can do in terms of monitoring what happens with this surge. We do not envy those who have to go through the eye of this storm in the dark. That is the stuff of nightmares, and our hearts go out to those who are doing that with their loved ones and probably don't have power, so they're not even able to follow along and benefit from your wisdom and timing. Tom, thank you very much. We'll check back with you in a little bit. Right now, before we go to break, let's check in with Miguel Marquez. He's in Punta Gorda, and I don't know if you could hear Tom, Miguel, but this is a big lady that we're dealing with here with Hurricane Irma. She's going to hit you hard, and it's going to last for a long time.
Irma has been hitting us for a while, and it is definitely getting worse. I don't know if we're going to have it as badly as you, but what Tom talked about, 3 hours from Port Charlotte, we're just south of Port Charlotte. We're about 60 miles north of where you are, so we're experiencing what you did a little while ago. This is the marina. This is what's amazing. That water here is still going out on this side. This is the marina. There is no seawater in this marina anymore. It's all fresh water just pouring in off the land from this storm. The boats you see off in the distance, the big one and then the boat there, those are sitting on mud right now, incredibly enough. If you look over here to the left, you can see that there's a sign that's just about to come off of a pole there. That's the power of this wind. And then look at the trees in here. These are some of the strongest winds we've seen so far. The palm trees are just, perpendicular. They doesn't look very normal. It's amazing that these things can stay up and do fine. All the way around, it looks like Punta Gorda, at least this section of it, has just lost electricity a little while ago as well. I think they expected that. The emergency management folks talked about the storm hurricane force winds around 8 p.m. tonight. I don't know if this storm has slowed down or not. Perhaps Tom can speak to that later, but clearly it may be slowing down a little bit before we get to that other side of the eye wall when the wind will change direction and all that water that was washed out to sea will all come back. They're expecting a 5 to 8 foot storm surge here, that wall of water from the ocean, about 3 feet on land they're expecting. So we're going to watch for that and maybe have to change positions before that happens. Chris?
All right, Miguel, stay safe, stay in touch. Dave, as we go to break, show them our giant-sized weather vane, the crane. It's not a danger here because luckily it's not as high as those high-rise cranes in Miami proper where they had trouble with a couple of them, but it is pointing straight in the direction of the Gulf. That's where this wind is coming from. So literally, the wind has the best advantage it could to send the maximum amount of water from the Gulf in storm surge right up into the heart of Naples. So we're going to take a break right now. We will keep an eye on the storm surge and we will show you where Hurricane Irma is headed next. And still, we're waiting on the storm surge. And these gusts are the real deal. There's a benefit for us to be here is that when this is done, as you know, we're going to go out with search and rescue and we're going to volunteer our time and we're not working. Oh, there are those gusts you're talking about. And it's going to be good to know where the worst of it seems to be going. Right, the branches are starting to come off this tree next to us. It was only a matter of time. She's starting to let go, fellas.
The wind is just too dangerous, and it's really the lack of visibility. We can barely see 100 yards in either direction, and obviously with the winds blowing at this speed, if there is debris flying through the air, I don't want to be out in the middle of that and get caught upside the head by some flying branch or anything like that.
Some of these big trees that are surrounding this hotel, I don't know if they're going to make it. They're starting to cleave out. That's why I just grabbed the producer and put it back inside.
You likely will be fine second and third floor, but get everybody off the street.
All right. Hey, Chad, water's coming up this street here. I don't know if you can see it. Dave, show it to him. This just like is coming out of nowhere. All of a sudden, this street is flooded. Do you see it?
Yes, absolutely.
This is something that they're going to remember for a really long time. All right, so Chris Cuomo here in Naples along the west coast of Florida, areas of particular vulnerability here. Hurricane Irma took advantage of that. The eye wall coming right over this area. Chad Myers says that there was a sustained gust of about 140 miles an hour. That would stand up as some type of record for a hurricane from the area from whence it came. But the statistics are relevant, and the difference between a Category 2 and 3 is mostly about the science. It is only relevant if it's predictive of what's about to happen to the people on the ground. And what we were worried about wasn't us standing in the weather just to show you what's going on and give you information and arrest some of that curiosity, but it was to give you a window into what these people who stayed behind are forced to deal with. And that's here in Naples and what we've seen in Miami. Now, after we take this break, we're going to send our coverage to Anderson Cooper. He's about 130 miles north as the storm flies. He's in Tampa Bay. They're going to deal with the same thing and in the dark. Our coverage will continue right after this. Stay with CNN.